Okay, last time we kind of ended with this slide, and then I hurried up through a bunch of slides that I shouldn't have hurried. And then, because before you left, I wanted to tell you that carbon monoxide binds to hemoglobin 200 times better, or has 200 times the affinity than oxygen does. And that's what makes it so crazy poisonous, besides that it's colorless and odorless. Okay? So then I kind of hurried through this. I know I ended with this. I just want to say the catalytic converters take all the gases, and it's supposed to send out water and carbon dioxide. Okay? And I guess I can use my mouse here. But when it's not working right, you'll get some carbon monoxide. And we had the example of the two high school students in the Indianapolis area. Somebody remembered that. And I mean, whenever I see those things, they're forever remembered. So they were driving in a car, I don't think for that long. They both passed out. The car had an accident. And by the time they were found, one of the high school students was dead and the other, recovered. But, I mean, it's crazy stuff like that happens. You can buy a carbon monoxide detector for your car that plugs into the cigarette lighter. Okay? And then in a little bit, maybe what I can do is I'll go to the document cam because I want to show you. Remember, Aaron had it at home, brought it home. So let me do those two things here. Okay, she brought this one home, and this is like an industrial type that you wear like on your belt or whatever. You can see it says 0, and see where it says max? If you hit that, it's supposed to display the max it's ever seen, and then you hit max again, and it'll go back to the regular. And so Aaron said it never changed, okay? So it doesn't read anything different when I hit max. So Colleen, could you come over and get this? Because now you're going to put this wherever you live, right? Till next Monday. Bring it back next Monday. And here's the scary thing that happened to me one time. There you go. And this is scary. I'm going to get to this one. I gave a detector to somebody, right? And said, bring it back to the next class meeting. What's the worst thing that could happen? The student didn't show up for the next class. My mind is racing. I think I had somebody call her. Oh yeah, she just was sick and didn't come to class. It's like, oh my God, my worst fears. Anyway, this other detector is more like what you'd find in the fire department. On the back, there's an inlet, see, right here. And when you turn this on, you wave it in the air. And technically what you do is you turn it on outside. So it can kind of say, okay, what is fresh air? And then I'll turn it on here. And it goes through a whole bunch of things, and I guess I can focus on that. It's always measuring, now it's saying 1. Okay. It's in parts per million. Remember what we talked about? What's a good detector? It reads parts per million. It keeps track of the max it ever saw, and you press a button and it shows you max. And this would be like what the fire department would have. It's reading 1 right now. There's no trouble about bouncing between 0, 1, 2, maybe 3. If something goes up to 10 or 11, that's still not really bothersome. And we'll show you in some charts about when to get nervous. But I like the ones that read out parts per million in the household rather than just have like an alarm that goes off, because they're going to go off at like 35. But then I'd like to have seen it get up to 35. That would alarm me of something. Anyway, so this you'd wave around, and this one is actually like a fire department. If you leave that sit there, it'll go off automatically, I think, after 10 minutes. It's made to go into a room and check things out. Okay, let me get back to my other diagram here. Okay, so then, this thing I know I passed through, but you've got one of the articles to read about this couple that passed away in a hotel room, and then 6 weeks later, a little boy passed away in the same room, and some people were sued because, first of all, if you're ever a coroner and 2 people die at the same time someplace, that's got to set up some red flags right away. I don't care how old they were. That's too much of a coincidence. Sure, it could be both natural deaths, but They're in a hotel room. They're going to visit relatives. The relatives called the hotel and said, where are those people? They went to the room. And the flag wasn't raised. Ends up being somebody repaired a smoke chimney the wrong way. Anyway, what I want to get down to is the bottom here, where it talks about the symptoms. Okay, you get up to about 35 parts per million, and then notice the percent. I'm never going to ask you the percent, but it's not bad because I think in other countries, their detectors read percent, not parts per million. So be careful if you're some foreign country, and if it's reading different numbers, it might be actually percent. But it takes a long time. Look at even the highest is only 1.2%, right, at the bottom of that chart. I mean, it just tells you how deadly the stuff is. So here it is. You get headache and dizziness. Some of the early symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning are very like the flu symptoms. And you can be fooled that you have the flu or the family has the flu, and it's actually carbon monoxide, a low exposure to carbon monoxide. But you can just see headaches, and then the higher you get, I mean, look at the percent, even 0.04%, you get headaches within 1 or 2 hours. Look how deadly that stuff is. Tachycardia, what's that? What's tachycardia? Fast heart rate. Tachy is fast. Okay. Dizziness, nausea, death within 30 minutes. Okay, so all that kind of crazy stuff. Next chart. This one shows in percent. It's probably something I got off on the internet on a European site. It doesn't really matter. The point is, the carbon monoxide binds to hemoglobin. Now here's one little caveat that I've never said before, and it's probably not in the reading. Do you know there's 2 kinds of hemoglobin? Everybody in this room has what's called adult hemoglobin, okay? But in the human population out there, there's another kind of hemoglobin. And it's found in all fetuses. It's called fetal hemoglobin. Why do I say it's different, or has a different name? Because it acts different. You know, the fetus tends to be, in mammals, in an oxygen-poor environment, right? The oxygen has to diffuse into the maternal environment, then it's got to go through the blood supply to the placenta, and then it's got to cross the placenta into the fetal blood. So there's another barrier, right? Another diffusion barrier. So somehow nature has said, I'm going to make fetal hemoglobin bind oxygen even better than adult hemoglobin. So it's even a better binder of oxygen. But what does that also mean? It's a better binder of carbon monoxide. Okay? So be aware of that. So this one, it just is basically a summary of all that and talks about the neurological symptoms. We're going to go on. Okay, so this one talks a little bit about sources. And the point is, there's many sources, and like here, the chimney might be blocked. Oh yeah, I've got a story about that. Unfortunately, somebody that I met died of carbon monoxide poisoning a number of years later. Could be space heaters, somebody leaves their car running in the garage. That happens sometimes, and then the fumes get in the house. Something in the basement, something in the living room, whatever. Here's one other thing I haven't told you. All these gases, and at the end we're going to make a table of all the gases, but one of the parameters is the density of the gas. You should know the density. And here's what we do. We say air equals 1. You know, there's a certain number of grams per liter of these gases, but it's better to actually go 1 equals air, and then any number that's higher than 1 means it's more dense than air, and any number less than 1 means it's lighter than air. And that gives you an idea of where you put your detector. Smoke detectors are always high because smoke is very light and it goes to the ceiling or up, right? If you see a smoke detector Down low? No. Terrible. But you know what? A carbon monoxide detector can be anywhere. Because density equals 0.968. Darn close to 1. So it's going to mix with any place. So a lot of times at Walmart, if you find a carbon monoxide detector, sometimes they plug into a wall socket. And then they have a battery backup. So they work if the electricity's working, but if the electricity goes out, then the 9-volt battery in there takes over, which is kind of neat. Okay? So, okay, let me tell you the story about the person that I know that died. It was a friend of a friend, Colorado, Grand Junction, Colorado. Beautiful out there. Some people have a cabin up in the mountains. This person and his girlfriend went up in the springtime to open up the cabin the weekend. They, I'm sure they cover up windows, the snow gets up there, all that stuff. They went to bed. And I think it was a Friday night or Saturday night. Monday morning, they don't show up to work. Somebody calls. Somebody has to go up to the cabin. They're both dead. They forgot to unplug the chimney from that was for the water, hot water heater. And I mean, this person was experienced. Just how you get busy. And so this person that I met died a few years after I met him. It was a man. The woman died too, but I didn't know her. But I mean, it's easy to do even with somebody experienced, okay? So that's why you have these detectors. You'd have them in every level of your house. Here's another thing about sources. Car left running in the garage. Portable generators. Oh, this one gets people. Because here's what happens. And some of those articles that you read that I've got linked to, some of these I think were that. Somebody rents a generator because the electricity's out, or they didn't pay their bill, and the power company shuts off, and you've got 3 kids that are hungry and cold, right? And so you're going to but rent a generator, put it in the garage next door or in your basement. That happens. And then they don't realize how much carbon monoxide. Here's my thought. Whenever somebody rents a portable generator, the company that rents it should say, here's a carbon monoxide detector to take along. I think that would be very smart. They don't do that at all. But I think it'd be really neat that it was like mandatory to have a CO detector go with a generator. Because I don't think people realize how much. They're very, they don't have a catalytic converter. They're putting out a lot of carbon monoxide. Okay, so, people use their oven when the heat goes out, right? The power goes out. Sometimes the gas stoves. All kinds of sources. Okay, it's formed, there's an oxygen-starved environment. All carbon monoxide is incompletely formed carbon dioxide. It didn't get to the carbon dioxide that it wanted to. Okay, more facts. Colorless, odorless, tasteless. They say a gas slightly less dense than air. Does that agree with what I told you about the number? Yeah. But it's just so slightly that you can have your detector any place, and it'll be fine. Okay? Another name. Okay, and it's flammable. I didn't realize that till a while ago. Okay. Found, there it is. It's always a part of the environment. And so notice how in the environment it's 0.1 parts per million. My detector could never do 0.1, right? It's 1 or 2 or 5. It's reading 1 right now. I can move around. Okay, so there's always going to be some carbon monoxide. Notice how 5 parts per million would be an average level in a house. But then if you get near a furnace or some stove, then it's 15. Colleen, if that thing goes past 15, something's not right. Okay? Exhaust, all kinds of stuff. Wood burning stove, a car without a catalytic converter. Okay. So then some more symptoms. OSHA puts out these laws because in some factories, I bet you have 50 parts per million every day. And see, OSHA says the maximum allowable continuous exposure for 8 hours is 50. To me, that's too high. But I bet you in some factories it's going to be that. And that's why I don't work in a factory, I guess. You know, look at, I'm here in this environment that's reading 1. I feel good about that. Okay, so it's always headache, it's always something neurological. Fatal within 1 hour, right there, look at that. And all kinds of stuff, all kinds of fatal stuff. Okay, more, I'm just saying more of these things, okay. This one happens to be percent, and that probably, I don't want to concentrate much on that because that percent doesn't really jive with the other tables, and so I think there's something wrong with their numbers because 10% was even, the highest on the other one was 2%, right? Yeah, so that way if you know your stuff, you'll have to say, there's something wrong with this, okay? Okay, here's another table. Death, if not moved from exposure, all this kind of stuff, headache. Okay, and that one's also percent, so I'm not sure if they're talking about percent in the air or percent saturated in the blood. They're not, we're not sure about that. Okay, so here we go. It displaces oxygen on the hemoglobin, 200 times better, even more for fetal hemoglobin. And then I'm going to show you some autopsy pictures. Anybody have a queasy stomach? Okay, because when people die of carbon monoxide poisoning, there's this distinct pink color to the skin. Now, it's interesting, if you're a meat science person, help me with this. Remember they did experiment with flushing carbon monoxide on meat. Anybody can tell me that story? It makes meat look redder. Anybody?
Packaging meat, they put a little bit of carbon dioxide in.
Say that louder.
When they package the meat, they pour it into there to make it have a fresh look, so when consumers buy it, it looks more fresh. If it's exposed to oxygen, it turns brown.
So they're still doing that?
Yeah, for packaging purposes.
Okay, for packaging purposes, especially like beef, if you flush the package with carbon monoxide, it looks red. And I think I've got some pictures of that. If it's oxygen, it looks duller. And so for the consumer...
It's for eyes, for visibility, so it looks better. You're going to buy it.
Thank you. Because, yeah, that's crazy. Because then what it looks like, it looks fresher than it really is. Okay, so be a good consumer. I think I've got some pictures of that too. So here we go. What do we got here? Okay, this talks about the lung. We already did enough of that. Diffusion and so forth. Okay, here it is. Okay, here's one treatment. One treatment for carbon monoxide poisoning. It's, in a sense, the antidote is pure oxygen. And sometimes under pressure. And if you ever have pure oxygen under pressure and want to put the whole body in there, you sit in one of these things called a hyperbaric chamber. Who's familiar with that? Anybody? Okay. What's it also used for? There's probably one in a hospital. I should check that out. Yeah.
Don't they usually use it for like scuba divers that come up to
Well, yes, you can use it for the decompression for scuba divers, but it's also being used for something in Lafayette right now. Not only carbon monoxide. What's the other thing it's used for? Anybody? Wound healing. Oxygen under pressure. Wound healing. Okay, let's see. And they make them big. In fact, someplace there's one that you can take a horse into. I'm not sure where that. I think it's down in Kentucky. Okay? Hyperbaric chambers. Oxygen under more than 1 atmosphere of pressure. Okay? Here we go. Here's the autopsy pictures. That's not maybe bright pink, but these are people that have succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning. Okay? Cherry red discoloration of the skin, because it's like that same thing it does for meat. It brightens up everything. Okay? There's another one, unfortunately. Okay, let's see. Oops, sorry. There it is. There's the meat. Before carbon monoxide, after carbon monoxide. The same piece of meat. Which one would you buy in the store? But there's no difference. There's no difference between them. Yeah. I thought, one time somebody told me they don't do that anymore. But
Yeah,
you're,
I took a meat science class last semester and they still do it, especially for the packaged steaks or cut meat that are in the
Yeah.
yellow foam with the plastic wrap. Those
Yeah.
all have
okay,
it.
so they still do it. Okay. Yeah, so it's a very controversial thing, because some people don't like that they do it.
Yeah, they do it at a very minimal level, like it's
Oh, yeah.
regulated and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna like have any effect on you, but I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is, it's still a little deceiving. Okay, there it is. Gas mixture, modified atmosphere packaging. That's what we're talking about. Okay, if you're staying for your presentation or want to hear some, man, you could stay.